Rainbow Falls is an episode I honestly shouldn't enjoy. There are a ton of narrative issues that drove me up the wall the entire time I watched it, but Rainbow Dash is such a badass that I can't help but have a good time here. The first 6 or so minutes of this episode was just painful. The dialogue is incredibly heavy-handed and laden with blunt exposition. None of it feels very natural. Which is odd, because as we continue into this episode, it starts to get a lot better. It's like they just couldn't be bothered to naturally set up the scenes with context clues, and instead just dumped all the requisite information we needed into the beginning character interactions and called it a day. This show is usually better than that, and I found myself incredibly off-put with this episode right from the beginning. As we continue on, though, it becomes clear that this episode has a rather confused sense of series continuity. On the positive side, when Spitfire shows up, she remembers who Rainbow Dash is and refers back to what happened when Dash was in the academy last season, which is a good thing. On the other hand, though, Snowflake, Bulk Biceps, doesn't seem to remember he was in the academy as well. I mean, damn, he was flying well enough during that episode, and the beginning of Wonderbolt Academy clearly shows you needed to be accepted to get in, so Bulk must have been able to pass some sort of aptitude test. What gives? Characterization is also an interesting minefield in this episode. I'm not really sure if I buy Flutters being okay with competing in the Equestria games. She was terrified to even fly in front of the weather team during Hurricane Fluttershy, but now she's proud to be competing in what is assumedly the equestrian equivalent of the Olympics, in an event that is all about her childhood phobia? I guess this could be perceived as the progression in that episode actually sticking, something I've been bitching about for a while now, but I'm not sure that this was intentional or merely because she was the only other Pegasus in the main cast and the writers couldn't be bothered to spotlight 2 background ponies with Dash at the same time. In addition, Spitfire is progressively becoming more and more of an ass. In fact, the Wonderbolts in general have steadily been cast in an increasingly negative light. Spitfire was a complete and total dick in this episode, even though you would have thought her stint with Dash and Lightning Dust last season would have taught her to be better than this. Not to mention she seemed to be really tight with Soren during the best night ever, so it just feels weird for her to so easily throw him under the bus here. Her reasons for replacing Soren wasn't even framed in an understandable light, such as just telling Soren that Dash is the better athlete, we're doing this for the team. It was a blatant lie. Spitfire has gone from a legitimate role model for Rainbow Dash to a completely underhanded manipulator, and Fleetfoot apparently isn't any better. With the way they're being portrayed, I'm kind of hoping Dash eventually realizes she's better than the Bolts and tells them off if she ever does get accepted. The only one who had any sense of moral conscience out of the whole group was Soren, and he got hit with the stupid stick at the end, acting grateful towards Spitfire for letting him back on the team after she just admitted to lying to him because she thought he wasn't good enough. He took that pretty well. Too well. The rest of the main 6 didn't need to be here again either. Twilight, sure, she has main character powers and was the one playing Conscience to Rainbow, so she gets a pass, but AJ and Pinky's roles were completely empty, and Rarity's didn't even make any sense. Why was she working on the uniforms during the tryouts? In the middle of a field. She should be back in her boutique if she wanted to get work done. None of these characters' presence in the episode felt natural or necessary. Sure, Twilight shoehorns their activities into the spotlight at the very end to add weight to Dash's moral choice, but they didn't actually have to be in the episode for these points to still be valid. Twi could have just as easily introduced these roles right there and it still would have worked. The Equestria Games is clearly going to be brought up again, so we're going to see these characters fulfill these roles, so it wouldn't have been an empty statement. Each scene the remaining 5 were in felt offbeat with the rest of the episode, seemingly included just so we could give the other ponies something to do and nothing more. Man, I'm really ragging on this episode pretty hard. If only there was something that could come in and just redeem everything. I loved how Rainbow Dash chose not to choose by faking an injury. This handlement of the situation was so much better than having her join up with the Wonderbolts only to later realize she was wrong. It provides more integrity to her character and shows that she's loyal to all of her friends, choosing not to hurt any of them, even if that means she doesn't get to compete at all. As much as she loves winning, and as much as she idolizes the Wonderbolts, the conflict for her wasn't about who she's able to fly with, or about getting the most glory, but instead which group of ponies that she respected she would have to let down. I love this kind of conflict and character growth that shows moral integrity, so I was totally behind this episode from that angle. However, one has to wonder from a macro perspective if this episode was even necessary. Like, Obviously, this is Dash's key episode, and the rainbow eyes are a thing, and Rarity's spool and Dashy's badge are the keys to unlocking the rainbow power box. That's not what I'm talking about. From a moral standpoint, Rainbow is really not learning anything here that she hasn't already done so before. While the sequence of events in Rainbow Falls are different, the lesson of valuing friends and your own moral compass over your dreams was exactly the same lesson from Wonderbolt Academy last season. Hell, even Spitfire says so herself in this episode.
Saw it at the Academy, seeing it again here. We could learn a lot from a competitor like you.
If we go back in the series even further, this episode's structure is basically taking Rainbow's theme from the second part of the Nightmare Moon arc and expanding it to 22 minutes. And then if we look at other characters in the show, this is essentially Dashy's version of Sweet and Elite, with both episodes putting Dash and Rarity in the good graces of their dreams, only to have their friends become a hindrance and force them to make a choice between the two. There's just nothing going on in Rainbow Falls that this show hasn't already explored before. Digi mentioned in his video that Ponyville needs to stop holding Rainbow Dash back, and the fact that she wasn't able to fly for Cloudsdale was rather insulting, especially considering that no one on the Ponyville team seems to give a crap about flying. And I can totally get behind this angle. Fluttershy is afraid of flying, and apparently this episode retcons Bulk Bicep's ability and interest in flight that was implied during Wonderbolt Academy, and these facts further compound the characterization issues on display here. However, I think this episode, along with Wonderbolt Academy and the Nightmare Moon bit that it mirrors, shows that flying in and of itself isn't Rainbow's dream. She has an idealization of the scenario, and that's what she wants. She doesn't just want to fly with the bolts, she wants to do it her way, without sacrifice or compromise. Just like in Wonderbolt Academy, as soon as Dash senses foul play, she backs off. Dash's moral compass is the most important thing to her, even more so than flying, as twice now flight has taken the back seat to ethical integrity. Rainbow is not only loyal to her friends, but also to her own standards. There is a line that she will not cross, regardless of what has to be sacrificed in order to maintain it, and that's why I love the conflict on display here and in Wonderbolt Academy, because it paints Rainbow in such a triumphant light. And this is why, despite my laundry list of complaints, I still found myself enjoying this episode overall, the ending credits leaving me with a smile on my face and good feelings. Dash is just so damn good, unflinching in her integrity, and I personally resonate with that incredibly strongly, and every time I see her portrayed that way I can't help but get hype, even if she's been down this path a few times before. Add to the fact that our favorite male mare is back in the fold as well, and there was a fair bit to like here. I'm just a bit stunned at the blatant disregard for continuity and characterization, as well as the heavy-handed exposition. Now I have a question for you guys. What did you think of Bulk Biceps getting a big role in today's episode? Did you think it was cool to see a background pony given some more love like this? Or would you rather he stayed in the background? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have a question for me, I'll be doing a Q&A on this episode the next few days, so feel free to leave me a question in any of the social media links under the like button below. Until next time, I'm Tommy Oliver. Stay curious. Sometimes I think that I am overwhelmed by the vastness of my realm. Reaching up, the sun splits in five, and so